And I will always continue to say that riots are socially destructive and self-defeating. I'm still convinced that nonviolence is the most potent weapon available to oppress people in their struggle for freedom and justice. I feel that violence will only create more social problems than they will solve. That in a real sense it is impractical for the Negro to even think of mounting a violent revolution in the United States. So I will continue to condemn riots and continue to say to my brothers and sisters that this is not the way. Continue to affirm that there is another way. But at the same time, it is as necessary for me to be as vigorous in condemning the conditions which cause persons to feel that they must engage in riotous activities as it is for me to condemn riots. I think America must see that riots do not develop out of thin air. Certain conditions continue to exist in our society, which must be condemned as vigorously as we condemn riots. But in the final analysis, a riot is the language of the unheard.
I'm about to spit the truth. I'm about to spit some hard facts at y'all. Some of y'all ain't gonna like it, but this is what I do. This is what I do. I help inform the people. I don't do misinformation. I do just facts. This is what I'm here for. So I'm going to tell y'all who was more correct during their time and in 2020 if they were alive on their personal movement between Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. As we know, we can both agree, all of us, we can all agree that Martin Luther King and Malcolm X had good intentions, and they were both fighting for freedom of black people to stop being oppressed by the white man, and they just had different methods on how to get there. Obviously, we know in boxing, there's different and multiple ways on how to knock someone out. At the end of the day, you're trying to get a knockout. So therefore, when it comes to Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, they were both trying to get out of modern day slavery, aka oppression. And that's what we're about to talk about. So this is how they did it. Martin Luther King's way, as we know, his way was about no defense, which means like no violent acts. He wanted to hold hands with the people around him to congregate and let everyone know that we love you. And out of love, oppression will stop. Okay? That's Martin Luther King. Malcolm X, on the other hand, was a man of, a lot of people like to say he wanted to incite riots and looting. Incorrect. And this is why. Malcolm X was about not only unity, so he's not a racist either. A lot of people think he was racist. He's not. He wanted all unity of color to come together to stop oppression of the white man systematically. And so with his way, it was if they punch you, you punch them twice as hard. You don't let people just stomp on you and do whatever they want and you not do anything back. That was Malcolm X's way. So pretty much, long story short, Martin Luther King started coming to the conclusion that Malcolm X's way was just a little bit more correct than his. And this is why. This is why Martin Luther King said that. So they asked Martin Luther King in the interview, do you really believe in no violence at all? And he said that pretty much if necessary, violence is the last resort. If there is no other way, then he would agree to use violence to stop the oppression. Which at the end of the day, he was just agreeing to Malcolm X's way in that sentence. So in this world that we live in, where there's a yin and yang, there's good and evil, there's black and white, there's always an opposite to something. You cannot love someone so great that they're just going to stop enslaving you. That's just facts. And like Malcolm X said, you think of all revolutions throughout history, they were all fighting for something. Spanish Revolution, the Civil War, the North versus South. There's a whole bunch of revolutions that happened in history, and they were all fighting for some type of freedom, land, some type of acquiring something. Pretty much what these revolutions were about. So with that being said, there's never been a black revolution yet. And that's what Malcolm X was hinting at. Malcolm X was talking about there's going to be a black revolution. And in order to get out of slavery, in order to stop being oppressed, we as a people got to have a black revolution at some point in time. Because when people are oppressing you, there's no way that you can get out of oppression by holding hands, singing Kumbaya, we shall overcome. That's what Malcolm X said. So, with that being said, let's just go over some history facts. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King were not friends. A lot of people like to say that they were not. Malcolm X actually reached out to Martin Luther King on a number of occasions, about like 6 to 8 times, to try and have a political debate on TV and a fight for civil rights together on TV. Martin Luther King denied all of his emails. Obviously, there's only no emails, but you know what I'm saying, letters. He denied all letters of Malcolm X. He did not want to talk to him. They did meet up at least one time in history. They talked for about 3 minutes. And, you know, that's where you get that famous picture from, where they were holding hands, shaking hands, smiling at the camera. So they had a respect for each other, but they didn't agree on each other's method. So Malcolm X also said that Martin Luther King was being subsidized and controlled by the white man to pretty much, Martin Luther King was being controlled on what he had to say for most of his speeches because he was being funded by the Rothschilds. The Rothschilds, as we know, is one of the top 10, top 15 families in the world that owns a whole bunch of corporations. And James Rothschild was funding Martin Luther King and pretty much on his movement. And Malcolm X called Martin Luther King a modern day Uncle Tom for that reason. Because plenty of people have reached out to Malcolm X, who is in New York. Martin Luther King's in the South in Mississippi. They tried to control Malcolm X as well. Malcolm X wasn't having it. He wasn't being controlled. He wasn't being censored. He was saying what he wanted to say. And so people don't understand that in the world that we live in, there's no possible way that you can love someone so hard that they're just going to give in and stop oppressing you. That's just facts. I mean, you're always going to have that one rebel. You're always going to have those group of people who can care less about love and they don't believe in the same things you believe in. So therefore, if people don't believe in the same things that you don't believe in or that you do believe in, how are they going to find love? How are they going to feel it? Because even if you give it to them, that may be weakness. So therefore, you go to the KKK house all you want and try to love on them and see if they don't still put them actions on you. I guarantee they will. They don't put them same actions on you. So even when it came down to towards the end of their lives, after Malcolm X was assassinated, you had Martin Luther King come out of jail and speak on the behalf of Malcolm X, even though they really weren't even friends. And as he was speaking on him, Martin Luther King, towards the end of his life, which they both died coincidentally at 39 years old, and he pretty much was going the Malcolm X route and was understanding that his method of peacefully protesting was kind of not happening in the way that he wanted to. Martin Luther King, when he got assassinated, all the black people started rioting. They started fighting back. They weren't taking no garbage no more. And the riots got so bad that Lyndon B. Johnson, shout out to Texas State, by the way, you know what I'm saying? He called out the National Guard to go control those areas of riot. And not only that, the Civil Rights Act of, I believe it was 1968 or 69, was passed after the passing of Martin Luther King. So, with that being said, everything Malcolm X was talking about fighting for your freedom, was correct. Because that bill would have never got passed if it wasn't for the riots that came after the assassinations. The riots is what made the president finally realize, like, man, this is crazy. We got to do something about it. These people are mad. We cannot contain them. They're going out of control. That's where you get that, he ended segregation. Separation of people. They came together after that. There was no more colored water fountains and all that. So, at the end of the day, I just want y'all to understand and know that Malcolm X's method, compared to Martin Luther King's, during his time, and if they were both brought back to life in this time in 2020, Malcolm X's way would fit the description on how to get out of oppression a lot better. It makes more sense than Martin Luther King's method. It's just facts. I mean, that's just the world we live in. I'm not disrespecting Martin Luther King in any way for his method. Obviously, it was working, but it got to a point where ultimately it was not working. It worked for the beginning. It worked to start off, but ultimately Malcolm X's way from beginning to end was the answer. Like, straight up. And so with that information, I just want everybody to know that. So, you know, just form your own opinion on it, even though I just gave out the facts. But, you know what I'm saying? By any means necessary, Malcolm X, baby. This is what we do. This is what we here for. So, y'all take care. Your boy loves you. I hope y'all love me. I know you do. So, y'all stay blessed out there. All right?
To bring about the complete independence of people of African descent here in the Western Hemisphere, and first here in the United States, and bring about the freedom of these people by any means necessary.